I want to show you something, and I'm warning you now. Once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. If I handed you $10 million tomorrow morning, no tax, no catch, what would actually change? Take a second. Picture it honestly. If you're like most people, your mind already moved. The house, the car, the version of you that walks into a room and the room notices. But look closely at what your mind just did, because it didn't reach for the money. Nobody dreams about a number. Your brain skipped straight past the $10 million and went hunting for a feeling. Freedom, respect, safety, the look on someone's face when they realize you made it. And here's the part that should bother you. You didn't decide to want those things through money. You were taught to. Carefully, deliberately, by an industry that has studied your psychology for 100 years, that understands your brain better than you do, and that has spent that century engineering one outcome above all others: that you never, ever feel like you have enough. This isn't a video about getting rich. There are a million of those, and they're part of the machine. This is a video about the machine. Because money was never the thing you wanted. It's the bait. And underneath the bait is a hook. And underneath the hook is a system. And I'm going to take you down through it, one layer at a time, until you can see the whole thing. You've been running a race you never agreed to enter, and the finish line was moved before you were even born. Let's peel back the first layer. Success leaves clues. The first layer is the one you were born inside of, so it doesn't feel like a lie. It feels like gravity. The lie is this: more money means more happiness all the way up. And for a stretch, it's true, which is exactly what makes it so dangerous. At the bottom, money is oxygen. It buys the end of a very specific terror: the rent, the bills, the cold math at 3 a.m. Take a person in that terror and give them money, and you don't buy them joy, you buy them the absence of pain. And that is real. But watch what your mind does with that. It takes "money ended my pain" and quietly rewrites it into "money is the source of all good things." It draws a straight line up and assumes the line never stops. It stops. And the place where it stops is so well documented, it should terrify you. In the 1970s, researchers tracked two groups: people who had just won the lottery and people who had just been paralyzed in accidents. A year later, they measured how happy each group actually was day to day. The gap had almost closed. The winners had drifted back down to who they were before the money. The accident victims had climbed back up. Both had returned quietly to their original setting, as if happiness has a thermostat and life keeps resetting it to the same number no matter what you throw at it. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. You can call it the treadmill. Whatever you get, you adjust to. The dream car becomes the car. The raise becomes the new baseline you panic about losing. The mansion becomes the place where you argue about the dishwasher. But there's a deeper bias underneath that one, and it's the cruelest trick your own brain plays on you. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman named it the focusing illusion, and he summarized it in one line that should be carved over every shopping mall. Nothing in life is as important as you think it is while you are thinking about it. When you imagine the 10 million, you imagine only the 10 million. You don't bring your anxiety to the fantasy. You don't bring your boredom, your habits, your 3 a.m. brain. So of course it looks like salvation. The imaginary version of you is happy because you deleted everything that actually makes you unhappy. The real you would show up to that mansion carrying all of it. And here's the most unsettling layer of all. It's wired into your chemistry. We blame dopamine for pleasure. We've got it backwards. Dopamine isn't the chemical of having.
It's the chemical of wanting. It spikes in the chase, in the anticipation, in the half second before you get the thing, and then it collapses the moment you actually have it. Your brain rewards the pursuit and goes silent at the prize. You already know this feeling. The thing you wanted for months, and how quiet it went the moment it was finally yours. Think about what that means. You are running biological software that is designed to make the wanting feel better than the having. You were built to chase and never arrive. Evolution didn't care if you were satisfied. It cared if you kept moving. So zoom out. Entire nations have gotten richer, dramatically richer. Incomes multiplied across the last 70 years, and measured happiness? Flat. A straight, indifferent line. Economists named it the Easterlin paradox, and they've been arguing about it ever since, because it shouldn't be possible. We got everything we said we wanted, and we feel exactly the same. You'd think a species that smart would notice, would stop, would say, wait, the line is flat, let's get off. We didn't. We pressed harder. And that's the question that opens the next layer down. If our own wiring already keeps us chasing, who figured out how to exploit that wiring? Who turned a private weakness into a public engine? Because somebody did, and they wrote it down. In 1927, a banker named Paul Mazur wrote a sentence in the Harvard Business Review that should be infamous, and almost nobody has heard. "We must shift America," he wrote, "from a needs culture to a desires culture. People must be trained to desire, to want new things even before the old have been entirely consumed." Read that again. Trained to desire, not to need, to desire, endlessly. This wasn't a fringe idea, it became the blueprint. The man who turned it into a science was Edward Bernays, and it's no accident that Bernays was Sigmund Freud's nephew. He took his uncle's map of the unconscious and weaponized it for selling. He didn't advertise products, he advertised identities. He figured out that you don't sell a man a car, you sell him the man he wishes he were, and let him believe the car is the bridge. That's the second layer of the lie. Your desire isn't even fully yours. A huge slice of what you want was installed, engineered by people who understood that a satisfied human being is a terrible customer, and a dissatisfied one is a renewable resource. And what did they aim all that engineering at? The oldest, deepest lever in the human mind: status. Be honest about the things you buy. The watch doesn't tell time better. A $10 watch keeps perfect time. The $50,000 watch tells people. The car isn't transport. A used Toyota is transport. The car at the curb is a message, idling, hoping to be read. We don't buy objects, we buy position. We buy a place in the ranking. Some things are valuable precisely because they're expensive. The product was never the object. It was the gap between you and everyone who can't afford it. But here's the trap inside the trap. Morgan Housel calls it the man in the car paradox, and once you hear it, every luxury car on the road looks different. You see someone drive past in a gorgeous, expensive car, and you assume the driver looks impressive. But be honest, you don't think about the driver at all. You imagine yourself in that seat and how impressive you'd look. So the man buys the car to be admired, and every person who sees it uses it to admire themselves. He spent a fortune for a respect that nobody is actually giving him. Think of the last thing you bought hoping someone would notice. Now try to remember if they ever did. And now I have to show you how dark this gets. Because you might tell yourself, fine, but at least the rich man is materially better off. So researchers at Harvard asked people a question. Would you rather earn $50,000 a year while everyone around you earns $25,000, or earn $100,000 while everyone around you earns $200,000? In raw money, it's not even close. $100,000 is double. The majority chose the $50,000. They chose half the money to be ahead of the people around them. They would make themselves objectively poorer for the feeling of being on top. That's not greed. That's something stranger and more primitive. We don't want to be rich. We want to be richer than. And than is a moving target that other people control. This isn't even unique to humans. Researchers ran an experiment with capuchin monkeys. 2 monkeys, same task, paid in cucumber. Both content, until one monkey gets a grape instead, a better reward for the exact same work. Watch what the cucumber monkey does. It stops. It looks at its cucumber, the same cucumber it was happily eating 10 seconds ago, and it hurls it back at the researcher. It would rather have nothing than watch its neighbor get more. That rage at unfairness, that comparison engine, is older than our species. It's not a flaw in you. It's standard equipment. And it doesn't stop at your feelings. It reaches into your body. There's a famous study of British civil servants, the Whitehall study. Everyone in it had a job, a salary, healthcare, but they were ranked, clearly, by office grade. And the researchers found something that should not be possible if money is the whole story. The lower your rank, the worse your health, and the sooner you died. Not because the lower ranks were poor, because they were below. The stress of low status, of looking up at people above you, was measurable in their blood, their hearts, their lifespans. Let that land. The status game isn't just expensive, it's lethal. The hierarchy you're climbing is quietly writing itself into how long you live. And the climb has no top. There's a thing called the Diderot effect, named after a philosopher who was given one beautiful scarlet robe. And suddenly, his shabby old desk looked wrong next to it, so he replaced it. And then the chair looked wrong, and the shelves, and the art, until he'd renovated his entire life into debt chasing the standard set by a single gift. One nice thing raised the floor on everything. That's not a flaw in Diderot. That's your next 5 years if you're not watching. So now you can see the second layer clearly. You're not chasing money, you're chasing rank. The rank is relative, so it can never be won. The people you're impressing aren't watching, and the game is measurably shortening your life. Which leaves one desperate question. Is there anything money buys that isn't a trap? Anything real underneath all of this? There is. Exactly one thing, and almost no one spends their money on it. Strip away the status, strip away the chemistry, and there is one thing money can buy that doesn't wear off, doesn't reset, and doesn't depend on anyone else's eyes. Time. Control over your own time. Morgan Housel says it cleaner than anyone. The highest dividend money pays is the ability to control your time. Sit on that word, dividend. It's the payout an asset gives you just for owning it, over and over. And he's saying the greatest payout money can ever deliver isn't a thing you hold, it's autonomy. The plain daily power to wake up and decide what you do and who you do it with, and to say, without asking permission, not today, not for that, not with them. And here's why this one is different from everything in the first 2 chapters. Remember the treadmill? The dream car that becomes the car? Freedom doesn't decay like that. You never wake up and stop noticing that you don't have to be anywhere. Every single morning it pays out again. It's the one purchase the hedonic treadmill can't erase because it isn't a thing. It's the absence of a master. When researchers dig into what actually predicts a person's day-to-day happiness, income comes in surprisingly weak. What comes in strong is control, the sense that you are the author of your own life instead of a character in someone else's schedule. So picture 2 people. The first earns a fortune, but to keep it, he answers to a board, a boss, a phone that never goes dark, a calendar carved into pieces by other people's demands. He owns a beautiful home he is almost never inside. The second earns far less, but his time is his own. He chooses his work, picks up his kid at 3, and when a Wednesday turns out sunny, he walks out into it. We've been trained to point at the first man and call him the winner, but measured in the one currency you can never earn back, the second man is wealthier, and it isn't close. And here's the cruel twist that sets up everything coming next. You'd think people who got their freedom would guard it like their lives depended on it. They don't. The moment most people get a little breathing room, they fill it. A free evening becomes another hour of work. A windfall becomes a bigger mortgage with bigger payments that chain them back to the desk. We are handed the one thing that can't be bought back, and we sell it again and again for things that reset to zero by Friday.
Which forces the darkest question in this whole investigation. If freedom is the real product, then the richest people on earth, the ones with the most money to buy the most freedom, must be the freest and the most at peace. They're not. Some of the wealthiest people who ever lived died chasing, hungry, unsatisfied to the end. Why? What is it about more that breaks the people who get it? When they asked John D. Rockefeller, at the time the richest man who had ever lived, a man with more money than entire governments, how much was enough? The answer he said to have given is 4 words long, and it should chill you to the bone. Just a little bit more. A little bit more. There was no number. The richest man alive stood at the summit of all the money in the world and still felt the gap. Because the gap was never financial. It was inside him, and money has no address there. This is the deepest layer of the machine, and it runs on 2 engines, both of them brutal. The first you already met, adaptation. The first million is a lightning strike. The 10th is a Tuesday. The thrill has a half-life every single time, no matter the size of the number, because your brain quietly resets the baseline and demands a bigger dose to feel the same hit. It's the exact architecture of addiction. We just don't call it that when the drug is net worth. The second engine is darker. Wealth isn't measured against your needs, it's measured against the people beside you. So every time you climb into a new tier, you don't relax. You inherit a new set of neighbors who have more. You escaped the old comparison and walked straight into a worse one. This is why lottery winners so often end up miserable. They didn't just get money, they changed leagues, and in the new league, they're at the bottom again. The ladder doesn't end, it just keeps adding rungs above your head, and your eyes keep drifting up. And the system is built so that earning more makes it worse, not better. Earn more, and your lifestyle quietly rises to swallow it. The bigger house, the better school, the nicer everything, until your expensive new life requires every cent of your expensive new income, and now you're trapped at a higher altitude with thinner air. They call them golden handcuffs. They're still handcuffs. You worked your whole life to upgrade your cage. So who escapes? Who actually gets off this? There's a story about the novelist Kurt Vonnegut at a billionaire's party, standing next to his friend Joseph Heller. Vonnegut needles him, points out that their host had made more money in a single day than Heller had earned from his most famous novel in its entire history. And Heller says, "Yes, but I have something he will never have." What's that? Enough. Enough. It might be the most radical word in the entire language of money, because the machine is engineered specifically so that you never learn to say it. An entire economy depends on you never feeling it. The person who can look at their life and say, "This is enough," has done something the wealthiest people in history could not. They've stepped off the treadmill while it was still running and walked away on their own 2 feet. But to do that, you have to know what you're really keeping score with, and it was never the money. It was something you've been spending the whole time without noticing, something the truly wealthy figured out, and the merely rich never did. There's a difference between being rich and being wealthy, and the entire game depends on you confusing the two. Rich is income. It's the number coming in, the salary, the bonus, the thing people can see. Rich is loud. Rich drives past you. Wealth is the opposite.
Wealth is the income you didn't spend. It's the options you kept, the freedom held in reserve, invisible by definition, because the second you turn it into something visible, it stops being wealth and starts being a status symbol on someone's wrist. And that's the irony that breaks the whole illusion open. The loudest signals of rich, the supercar, the watch, the mansion on the feed, are very often evidence of wealth leaving. That money didn't stay and become freedom. It walked out the door and became a costume. The man in the seven-figure car may be one bad month from collapse, performing a wealth he spent in order to perform. The genuinely wealthy person is usually invisible. He doesn't look like the magazine cover. He looks like someone with an ordinary car and an extraordinary calendar. Page after page of empty space that belongs to him and no one else. Because the highest form of wealth was never a possession. It's ownership of your own time. And here's the fact the whole machine works to keep you from feeling. Time is the only thing you cannot earn back. You can lose a fortune and build another. You will never make another Tuesday. Every billionaire you envy is spending right now the exact same non-renewable resource you are. And the only real question, the only one that ever mattered, is whether they're spending it on their own terms or on someone else's. So measure your life on the right scoreboard, just once. Income is how much money flows to you. Freedom is how much of your life you get to keep. You can have a modest income and a vast, open life, rich in the one currency that's actually scarce. For your entire life, you've been trained to maximize the first number. The people who quietly won were maximizing the second. And when you finally see that, really see it, every layer of this video collapses into one simple, devastating sentence.
Go back to the beginning. $10 million in your hands. And I asked you what would change. Now you know what your mind was really reaching for. It was never the money. It was freedom. A morning with no one's permission to ask for. It was security, the deep exhale of knowing you're finally safe. It was status, to be seen, to matter, to count for something. It was control over your time, your days, your one and only life. It was significance, the simple, desperate need to feel like you existed and that it meant something. Money was just the vehicle, the cart we piled every real human longing onto, because it was the one cart the whole world agreed to value. And here is the thought I need you to sit with, because it's the way out of the machine. If money is only a vehicle to those things, then sometimes you can reach the destination without it. Sometimes the real thing is sitting right there, free, and we walk straight past it because we were taught it has to be earned, priced, and delivered later. Let me show you how short the real thing is. If you're 30 years old and your parents are 60 and you see them a few times a year, the simple math says you may have already spent more than 90% of all the in-person time with them you will ever get. Not 90% of your money, 90% of them. What's left isn't decades. It's a small number of afternoons, and you can almost count them. No amount of money buys that time back. But here's the part that should wake you up. You don't have to buy it. It's still available. It's just sitting there in the chapters of your life you keep telling yourself you'll get to after. After the raise, after the house, after you've finally proven you're enough. You wanted to feel free, and you could have said no to one thing today. You wanted to feel significant, and someone in your life is quietly waiting to feel like they matter to you, and it costs nothing. You wanted control over your time, and you just sold another evening to a screen, to a number, to a race against strangers who will never know your name. I'm not telling you money doesn't matter. It does.
It buys the floor under your life and the end of a very real kind of fear. So chase it, but chase it awake. Chase it knowing exactly what it's standing in for, so you don't spend 40 years climbing a mountain only to reach the top, look around, and realize you climbed the wrong one, and paid for it with the only years you had. Because the cruelest way to lose your life isn't to lose it all at once. It's to spend it, slowly, quietly, buying a feeling you could have given yourself for free. So before you ever ask how to get more, ask the question we started with, the one the machine is built to keep you from ever asking. What am I actually trying to buy? Answer that honestly, and you may find you were never as far from rich as you thought. You were just chasing the wrong thing. I'm Theo. Success leaves clues. I'll see you in the next one.